Deep existential pain comes from wanting not to be what you are. It's a longing and yearning that feels so profound and so empty at the same time. It feels like an itch that wants to be scratched, or a wound that is unable to be healed, because you're looking for a place that feels unreachable. And the integration of this wound is often what brings people into the spiritual path. It's a yearning for freedom and completion, to not feel this pain anymore. And at the end of the path, the wound is healed. It's complete. The beautiful thing is that once this completion is reached, one will feel immense love for all existence. Emptiness becomes wholeness, and vice versa. But to be able to do that, you actually need to rid yourself of the notion that you really can heal the wound, or that you really can fulfill it in the way that you might want to. The longing to heal is what causes to make the wound fracture deeper. It strengthens the seeking and makes it much more difficult to ever really get to the destination. And in this process, hell exists. Hell is what happens when you desperately try to escape this wound, when you wish for a love that is different from what is, when you wish to be different from what you are, or when you wish to somehow fulfill that which just isn't possible to fill. This is the existential longing, and it is the cause for deep pain and final liberation. Whenever I felt this deep longing as a kid, I wondered if anybody else also did. Does anybody else also feel this depth of life and the inherent pain in it? And if they do, how come nobody be talking about it? It's like only during death and destruction, people actually wake up to reality in a sobering way. When wars come knocking at your doorstep and it affects you personally, then you start to realize that whatever's going on with reality is very odd. And in between, it's all about fulfilling desires so that we can avoid all of this stress and this concern about the inevitability of it all. So to not think about that, well, we try to have the perfect family, the perfect career, or just being more successful and richer than other people. And then we live in this narrative in our head how worthy we are as people, so that we don't have to question all of these existential questions. It's likely not a surprise to you that none of this works, because no power in the world can buy you permanence. Even the richest person on this planet will one day realize that also he is mortal. We want to connect with other people in this changing world so that we get like almost a sense of immortality or a sense of permanence. So we connect with people and want to have like this deeper sense of intimacy. And we kind of hope that maybe somehow it lasts forever. But what are you actually connecting with when you connect with a person? What is really the nature of intimacy? It's a type of intimacy that kind of feels like you want to merge with somebody. Like when you interact with another person on a deep level, you're kind of looking for like a cosmical connection, to really be one with another person. And there is like a lot of extent to that where you can feel quite fulfilled by another person, but even this will soon be shown as to be temporary. And then there's a sobering discomfort sometimes when you realize that no matter how much you love another person, or how much time you spend with a person, or how much sex you have with them, you'll always remain separate. And nobody can ever be in your experience for you. This yearning to be seen and understood fully as you are, just how you are, this is really the root of all desire, of this longing. And this is why it gets expressed in all of these love affairs, or just movies and shows about romanticism. But love is a very simple word to just try to express this desire to be full, to be complete. Because the nature of love is that it is complete. It tends to just be satisfied, and it doesn't question itself when the love is pure. It is, of course, important to understand one another in a relationship, and this understanding has a lot to do with what we perceive as love. So we want to understand reality or understand the nature of truth. But also in relationships, there can be kind of a toxic obsession about always needing to be understood, always needing to be empathized with, or always needing to be validated as a person. It's like we fundamentally think we are not good enough and need somebody else or something else to complete us. But when you take an honest look at physical reality, how could this even be possible? It's like you wish for your loneliness not to be lonely, or for the individual to be many people at once. It is not possible to become whole by another person or by something else. It's not possible to truly understand something by not being it. Like, you can only understand how it is like to burn yourself when you get burned, and whatever somebody explains to you will never be the same. This also happens when you have a conversation with another. Understanding comes from a sensation of almost a certain level of trust of what the other person is saying, and seeing this trust in their own vulnerability, their own possibility to get hurt. But all of this is always external from you, and it is always shifting and has the ability to change. And it is this shifting that causes you to reevaluate yourself and to question who you are. When you feel like you don't like your circumstances, or you don't like who you are because of your outside circumstances, you will never be whole and never be free. You'll never have real understanding because you're already always depending on something external to you. You always suffer the burdens of your environment that surrounds you. This is not freedom. This is not independence. The nature of hell is such that you want to escape everything, that you want to just imagine a reality where existence doesn't exist, or just the core of what you are, you want it to disappear. But there is no escape. When you see who you are, but really, really, really want to be someone else, or you just imagine, how nice it would be to be this person, or to live this other life, you will suffer immensely because you are trying something that is impossible. You're trying to be somebody that you're not. It's delusional. And this is what we do all the time, though. When we think about somebody who has more money than us or is more successful than us, we always compare and contrast. And this is really the core of the ego and the sense of separation. As long as you compare to another person, well, then how could you be whole? The nature of suffering is resistance to what is. And this deep emptiness of life that can't be fulfilled is a part of what reality is. It's a part of what you are. That's why you carry it around all the time. Emptiness is potential that can be manifested. And if you look into your own experience and in your own body, you can see that you're fundamentally empty. The thing that the universe is, this empty space, is also contained in your own experience every moment of your life. So whenever you want to fill this emptiness with something outside that exists, well, then you are kind of deluding yourself. It does not mean that suffering is associated with always this painful type of emptiness. Like whenever I say that reality is empty in of itself, it doesn't mean that it is suffering. It doesn't mean that you will always feel this hole inside your chest. But there's a certain pain when you approach this emptiness with honesty and just looking how it is exactly, that kind of feels like dying. It does feel kind of like a very sad and brutal truth. But it is exactly this pain that needs to be felt through in order to make the emptiness whole. Because you have an identity that is almost stuck there. You could imagine it like a sphere a small sphere in a bigger sphere. And you think you are the small sphere in your experience, which is your sense of identity. So you want to be whole, but you actually need to become more empty in order to be whole. And this all sounds very abstract when put in all of these physical words, but at the end what it comes down to is just acceptance. Acceptance of what reality is and what you are. But acceptance can only come when you don't wish for things to just go away. You cannot completely empty yourself out and see reality for what it is if you reject the fundamental nature of it, the nature that it is change. And it's a very counterintuitive move. To feel it deeper is the process of recognizing what is actual reality beyond your perception of yourself, beyond your self-image. And to not say that all of these feelings shouldn't be there. Because the matter of fact, they are. It's something that the body wants to process and wants to release. This is why actually suicidality is kind of common in humans. And it becomes more and more common. It's like a misguided way from the ego to want to destroy itself. It's like a virus that is so deluded by its uselessness so that it kills the host with it. But instead of doing that, well, the spiritual path is, you can say, the natural way to dissolution. So aside of humans being social animals, the only reason you feel alone comes from the sense of being separate from everything. There's a part of the mind that is convinced that it is separate from people, and it thinks it is not the same as reality. So it longs for this unity. It longs for absolution and death. So we all grow up in a society that out of the childhood, like from childhood to adulthood, develops this sense of identity through the judgments that people put on you, the lack of acceptance that people put on you, the lack of love that you don't receive. All of these create this sense of identity that then carries and informs the rest of your life. And it creates this clear distinction between you and other people. You and reality, and you against the universe. And it's this fundamental tension that causes the seeking and longing. And the only way to mend it is to unite that longing completely. To unite yourself with it. To look into the deep pain of this depth is actually the way of resolution. It's to feel it deeper and ever deeper. And this process of feeling it deeper is really the process of dissolution. To look how deep your own nature goes is what will reveal to you how deep the nature of reality actually goes. And it's much more overwhelming and impressive and also beautiful than you can possibly imagine. The reason why it can feel so meaningful to be alive is because underlying our identity, well, reality is really meaningful. The amount of meaning that appears everywhere cannot possibly be fathomed. So the identity or the ego actually restricts how much it means to be alive. It makes it way more limited because now everything is about you. Meaning is self-created. It emerges naturally from any situation where living beings exist. So whenever something exists, there's actually something to be appreciated. Even beyond just living beings, like each object, each facet of reality has some sort of quality to it just by the mere fact of existing. And there's understanding and beauty and acceptance there. It's just we don't relate to it on a personal level because we think we are a person that is separate from these things. But love and acceptance is really a quality of what existence is. This is why it's often said in spiritual circles that everything is love, or that God is unconditionally loving, because existence has the nature of just accepting itself unconditionally. And the ego has the nature of rejecting that, of not wanting to be everything, of wanting to be something separate, so it can feel more important and fuel its own survival. The difference between depth and superficiality start to merge and become one. And you realize that there was never any depth to anything, never any surface to anything. There's no way this longing could be fulfilled, but because there's really no difference between the perception of depth and the perception of superficiality, the perception of otherness and the perception of loneliness. It's like the screen of consciousness has no real depth to it. The distance you perceive with your eyesight is not quite real. Like even if you see something on the other corner of the street, it is still just happening in your brain. And you can notice that all sense of like depth, even emotionally, like it's not that it doesn't exist in some experiential form, like when you feel pain deeper, there's something that maps onto when I say pain is being felt deeper. But in reality, there's no way you can map it out. The experience just happens the way it happens. And in this, you can see that no matter what you experience, all perception is perfectly whole. Because there's nothing outside anything that can influence your own ball of awareness. Like, everything happens within this ball of awareness. So there's no need and no ability to subtract or add anything to it. Reality is simply what is. So your experience is simply what is. And as long as this recognition isn't satisfying to you, you'll keep on seeking for something beyond you. You'll keep on looking and looking for the answer to what reality is like when it's actually just staring right in your face. In some sense, there are a lot of answers, like logical or intellectual, that do help. And there's also a lot of natural beauty in this process. It's not all just focusing on pain and suffering. But in a way, this beauty that spirituality is trying to point to is just the natural explorative nature of life, where life endlessly rediscovers itself. So there's a way in which the seeking something new is really the way of reality already in its natural form, because everything always wants to see what's next, what it is capable of. That's the nature of change. But there's a more perverse version of this exploration. We are not really exploring the vastness of reality, but rejecting it and denying it. And this rejection and denial of it can be perceived as part of the exploration. And when you do that, well, or the way you can know if you're doing that, is because then you'll run into addictions. You'll run into endless amounts of addictions to fill the void. Because then you want to run into specific experiences to forget the emptiness of it all. And these experiences then allow you the possibility to just be completely enthralled and trapped by them. So you don't have to move towards your own emptiness, towards your own dissolution. This is really the entrapment of samsara. When you need to drink alcohol to be happy, when you need to have sex, or you need to eat sugary food to feel complete, it is this necessity of having to do something to endure existing, which is the pure definition of being trapped and not having freedom, and what feels like determinism. It's an endless wheel of suffering once you're stuck in this, because you can't ever fulfill the desire. It's not like you do something like eating a bunch of sugar, and then when the next time you have the same desire, you just say no. The desire grows and fuels itself as long as you are attached to it as a way of escape. When you're identified with any of these desires, well, you will feel trapped in who you are, because now you are someone who does the same stuff over and over again. So you think, okay, I cannot change. This is just who I am. But the moment you could dissolve the boundary between yourself and other, is the moment where you say, okay, I'm today not going to follow the addiction. I'm not going to follow this craving that is there just to escape the inevitable. Because you will be able to stand the pain of it once you move directly into yourself. Once you stop falling automatically into distraction. Because you will feel that actually sitting in silence and contemplating your own existence is actually a quite natural state of being that just in our modern technological era has been kind of lost. But it's actually this moving towards distraction that is the process of not accepting what you are. It's the process of repressing feelings, repressing anger and sadness that keeps the cycle forever alive. That's why the only way to authentic freedom is looking inward, so that you are not dependent on all of these outside circumstances basically attacking you or commanding your attention or forcing you to feel one way or the other. So you want to purposely feel the pain, feel the void, take time for yourself in this emptiness, and cry if you can. Crying is super beneficial. It's actually a very, very good sign when your body is able to release emotion. The crying might feel overwhelming at times, but it becomes more and more pleasant, more and more like a release of energy. And it becomes also clear, the more you observe the mind, is that it serves a purpose. Like it is a form of cleansing, and you can notice this. All emotions really just want to facilitate some form of cleansing and coherence in your body-mind system. Emotions are energy that wish to be released. And they point to whatever goes in your sense of identity. There's also, while after a period of intense emotional processing, reality might feel very neutral, like more blank, or maybe even a bit more empty than before, which is kind of the point. But once you process and dissolve all of these emotions into this emptiness, well, then what you end up at a very peaceful and equanimous type of reality. It has like this neutral quality to it, but it is very equanimous, so it's difficult to be disturbed. Even in negative sensations, you can feel equanimity to it. It's like when you step into a cold shower, but you actually enjoy cold showers, so you can still feel at peace despite the intensity of it. It's a cold type of love that your reality then becomes. It can, when in the state, you can still enjoy experiences like alcohol, sex, and even gambling. It's not that these things are inherently bad, but it is this, it only is real freedom when you can do it consciously without feeling the impulse to do so or the craving to do so. Because you then don't need any of these experiences anymore to find a fulfilling life, because the foundation of your life in this emptiness has completely been accepted. This cold love now flows through everything. And then there's no way to want to resist being yourself. It's unconditional love and simply seen as the nature of all things. Heaven is what happens when you fully embrace yourself for exactly what you are, with no need to escape or change yourself, with no judgment and storytelling about your personal worth. And your personal worth also doesn't depend on anything external. You simply understand your place in the universe and you know your worth. And the deeper and deeper this is integrated, the heaven path of reality starts to become more and more obvious, and it's seen in everything. The unity with what's real shows you that heaven is real and that you have direct access to it. So this was a lot of spiritual talk, but spiritual concepts can actually be extremely damaging, and a lot of people who enter spirituality get completely lost by all of the word salad that people cause. So if you want to understand why do I use the words in the way I use them and what they actually mean, then watch this video next.